Thank you to the speakers that are attending the event and are going to talk with us about this great subject, promising subject. So we're very excited to be here tonight. Thank you to Workshop 17 and Botcon for hosting this event with us. Thank you to all the team, Franklin, Paul, and all the team involved behind the event. And so the goal of this event is to, obviously, as you know, talk about artificial intelligence and how it can disrupt industries. The goal today is not to dig too technical and too deep into the technicalities of this amazing technology, but rather to remain very high level and broad on the subject, to try to understand more from a business perspective how it can really have an impact on our day-to-day lives. So I invite you strongly to participate. The goal is really not to give a lecture, but rather to have a discussion. This is why we call it a panel discussion. So we're lucky to have 5 amazing speakers tonight. So feel free to interrupt and ask questions, and you'll be invited to take part into the conversation. We'll try to articulate the event into 3 main parts. First part being more about what is artificial intelligence, because I think it's words that we hear a lot every day, but I think it requires some definition and better understanding to just know what we're talking about, basically. Then we'll talk a bit more about the core subject, which is how can artificial intelligence have an impact on industries and how it can disrupt existing industries. And in the last part, we'll try to have a bit more, to take some perspective on the subject and talk a bit more about the ethical matters and the legality around it, to see what are the legal and ethical implications of this technology. So we have 5 speakers, as I say, tonight. We have Jacques Ludik, first of all, who's the founder and president of the Machine Intelligence Institute of Africa. He's the founder and CEO of Cortex Logic, and he's the CTO of Bennett.ai. Did I say it right?
That sounds right.
We have Antoine, my partner at FinChatBot. FinChatBot is one of the startups that we incubated at Far Ventures, this incubator. And then we have Alex Conway, who is the founder and CTO of NumberBoost. We have Ryan Falkenberg, who is the co-CEO of Clevva. Who is Ryan? Cool, Ryan. And we have finally Frans, who's the managing director of DataProphet. So they will introduce themselves. I ask you to have a round of applause for them and to come to the scene. Yeah. So we'll start with a 5-minute presentation from Jacques.
I think that's working.
And this one should be working.
No, it's not.
It will work now, I think.
That's fine. Okay, there we go. Romain, thank you very much. I think what we want to do is just set the scene. Well, that was the brief. Is just talk about artificial intelligence just briefly. What I want to do here very quickly is just to frame this within a bigger thing, what we call the 4th Industrial Revolution. Now, who have heard about the 4th Industrial Revolution? There's a few people there. I like to call it the smart technology era as well, because of all these technologies like AI and these biotech and neurotech and blockchain and all these kind of technologies come to the fore. And the interesting thing around this is the fusion of these technologies creating a bigger impact on industries as well. So it's extremely exciting times to live. We all know we are in a digital revolution, but actually what's happening here, we're actually entering into a kind of a smart technology era that's actually building on that. And the definition I've got here is just the fusion of these technologies. And the interesting thing is it's actually blurring the lines between the physical, digital, and the biological world. If you think about what's happening with biotech as well, and even the artificial intelligence applications of that as well. So, very exciting times. And this is just, the natural question is, why the 4th and not a prolongation of the 3rd? And I think what we're all realizing, we see it in businesses as well, and the topic is about how AI or smart technology is disrupting industries, and we notice the velocity, the scope, and the systems impact. And we see companies disappear, we see new companies coming to the fore. And if you think about the major tech players, they are actually all vying for the AI throne, the artificial intelligence throne. And because they all realize they can unlock tremendous value, business value, and not only business value, even scientific value with this. So what we see is it's evolving at an exponential rate rather than linear pace. And I think that we as humans are very used to linear. We live in linear time. It feels like that. But the things that's happening around us is actually this exponential growth. And we see the scope of it's disrupting almost every industry in every country. It's not like Africa, it's Uber, Airbnb, it's happening here. So it's impacting everything, every industry. And I've got one slide that shows the AI landscape, the machine intelligence landscape, where you can actually clearly see all the new startups in various industries, but also if you look at enterprise, the whole enterprise, so big corporates, every facet of that corporate is being impacted as well. So, and we're going to talk about that here as well. But so this particular slide just shows talking about, we see AI, I know it's embedded. Google has got, I don't know how many, does someone know how many applications, like thousands of applications, where AI is currently being used at projects at Google as well. So it's actually, it's amazing. But you see the self-driving cars, the whole drive around that, a bunch of AI, deep learning, all sorts of things around that, drones, virtual assistants. Today's conference was about botcons, and I've got just a few slides just to set the scene on that, so we're going to talk about that, because that's one of the, you think about the applications of AI, virtual assistant chatbots, virtual assistants, intelligent virtual assistants, and robot advisors is one of the key applications. There's other applications as well, like algorithmic trading, there's the fraud detection that we all know, there is churn prediction, there's anti-money laundering, pattern detection, all sorts of things. This is all things in the financial services sector that you'll see come to the fore quite heavily. So this is the one slide that just shows the exponential growth, and AI is one of them. So you've got biotech and neurotech and 3D printing, sensors, IoT, robotics, drones, etc. And I think this slide is just kind of just the interesting thing here with our smartphones. We've got a little supercomputer there, and you're combining that, lots of people having these supercomputers, and now you've got that multiplied with the possibilities of these emerging exponential technologies. And suddenly you will see all sorts of stuff, augmented reality and virtual reality. You see AI embedded there as well. You would see lots of applications where actually it's an interesting thing. We had to adapt to computers with keyboards and stuff. Going in the future, we'll just have to talk, and we can just think about things, and buildings will become more intelligent. Think about IoT and cognitive IoT. So we're entering a very interesting period of time. So this is the landscape, and in the context of today's discussion, I thought this is the first version. There's already 3 versions of this machine intelligence landscape, and it's getting more crowded. But if you just look at the second one, I don't know if you can see it at the back, but it's talking about rethinking enterprise. So if you think about a business that I mentioned, so sales will be impacted, and there's a bunch of AI companies already just focusing on how AI can be utilized to improve sales. There's a bunch of companies around security authentication. There's companies around just fraud detection, and HR recruiting, marketing, personal assistant, we see that, intelligence tools. But if you think about industries, that's the discussion and topic for today, you see almost every industry, ad tech, agriculture, education, finance, legal, manufacturing, all of that generates data. And a lot of these companies try to come with platforms where you've got data, and now it's all about big data analytics. It's about how to apply artificial intelligence on structured and unstructured data. How do you do that? So, and these kind of companies are coming to the fore to help provide those kind of solutions. So I'm going to skip a few of these slides. You've talked about the definition of AI. AI is really simply as a branch of computer science, but it's all about the intelligence exhibited by machines and software. We really want to make it simple. So it's computer science that helps develop machines and software with intelligence. And then
part of that is machine learning, where it's really focused on the learning part. So it's actually, you don't program it, it actually learns concepts and things from data automatically. So you construct it's a part of AI that's focusing on learning from data. And then part of that, in today's BotCon conference, I think it was a few DataProphet also talked about deep learning applications and stuff. So that obviously is driving a lot of the breakthroughs in AI. And I just saw some new things around AlphaGo even, with reinforcement learning still being the best player in the world as well. So it's interesting. But deep learning is really just you model higher level of abstractions. So you start lower features and you just build it up and do some classifications on top, for instance. But there's so many different architectures. There's some beautiful things on that front I want to talk about. So I'm going to leave it here. Maybe just this and then something else, and we can do the panel discussion. So this is just looking at deep learning applications. Now it's showing general use cases and it's showing industry. So, and it's just breaking it out in terms of some of the things where deep learning can naturally be applied and where it works. So the first thing is around sound, voice recognition, voice search, sentiment analysis, all sorts of things on that front. And then there's a bunch of industries where you can use it. Telecom, CRM, handset makers, automotive, all that. Then you get time series data. So you get time series data, so again, you can have application like log analysis, risk detection, etc. And that's relevant for data center, security, manufacturing, auto, etc. Then you get to text. You can work with not only the technology has evolved, so you don't only work with structured data, but also unstructured data, text, videos, all sorts of things. So text, you can do augmented research, sentiment analysis, and there's a bunch of application industries for that as well. Image recognition and video as well. So you see all of that. So, okay, I'm going to skip a few things here. Just very quickly, from chatbots to intelligent virtual assistants to robot advisors. So I think over time, I think there's a bunch of AI companies out there that say they do AI, but there's not necessarily AI yet. But this is just a starting point. So you start with chatbots, and then you move to more intelligence, where the thing can be more proactive and maybe have semantic understanding, do proper natural language understanding. The technology is getting mature enough, so you will see more of that coming to the fore. And obviously you've got billions of dollars being put into this by not only the Googles, the major tech players, but there's OpenAI, for instance, that's funded by Elon Musk and some other guys as well. And they are also driving this technology forward. And as you know, with DeepMind, part of Google, they're doing some awesome stuff as well. So obviously there's a lot of hype around this, and it's very exciting, and there's all sorts of comments. Intelligent virtual assistants are the next tech revolution. It's actually just one of the applications. So AI is driving just this, and there's a lot more coming. So maybe just this slide, and maybe the next one, and I'll end there. So you can look at chatbots, virtual assistants, and robot advisors from the perspective of just, first of all, providing information. So that's maybe the smaller circle here. And then you can move to proper assistance, and where you infuse it with maybe data about the plant, or you've got systems data, you know a lot more about the individual. And maybe you've got some sort of machine learning there. And then you can move to instruction and advice, which is more kind of the advisory level, where you actually need to have some proper intelligence from data science at the back end to provide this robot advisor with intelligence, so that you can actually intelligently interact about all sorts of different things around this. And this is just one slide that I put together, just showing complexity of deployment. So information, static information, just info, simple search, but you can move to assistance where you've got maybe rules deployed, and maybe you're starting with machine learning and stuff, and you do query response, and you can maybe have a manufacturer or a corpus of information like standard operating procedures or FAQs, or you've got a knowledge base that you can get information from. But then you can move to the instructions and advice, where it's not just expert and data-driven rules, but it's a lot more. It's dynamic information. There's more advanced machine learning, maybe making use of all data sources. You've got intuitive guidance, where it's maybe bringing in ontology and deep language understanding. and so forth. So I think over time, over the next number of years, you will see a lot more sophistication. So I think we're just scratching the surface now. So you'll see a lot more happening. So I think I'm going to end there. So let's do the panel discussion.
Thank you, Jacques. So I think it's a very good introduction.
Oh, sorry, we missed something. You could have
So thank you, Jacques, for this very good introduction. I think the first thing that a lot of people are wondering is whether AI is really a thing. So there's more and more funding within artificial intelligence, machine learning, deep learning, and so on. It's probably one of the hottest topics in tech right now, if not the hottest. And billions of dollars are being poured into this tech startup that sometimes pretend to be AI, as you say.
Yeah.
Is it really a thing? Are companies really doing artificial intelligence? Who is doing artificial intelligence? Who is just putting a domain name .ai? What is your thinking around this?
Okay, who are you asking? So it's not for me. What?
Whoever wants to answer.
Okay, so, there's a lot of hype, clearly, and I think people, it's like anything. You know, we've seen this before, where there's a new catchphrase, and you're absolutely right, that's the hottest thing right now, AI. And it will go through, they talk about the Gartner hype curve, the hype cycles. So I think we see a little bit, but I think we're still scratching the surface, and we do have elastic cloud computing, we've got a lot more data, and if you think about data being utilized, it's going up like that, but data being generated is going exponentially. So the gap is increasing. So there's still lots of opportunity to unlock value. And the technology is mature enough to do unbelievable things. So it's limited by imagination, really. So I think, although there's hype, and we can utilize that, but it's clearly, you will see major impacts. I think it's true, the stuff that I've communicated there.
So it would be interesting to hear from Alex about cutting-edge technologies within like some machine learning applications.
Oh, sure. So the previous question around like, is AI real? Like, you know, the kind of AI you see in sci-fi horror movies, I think we're quite far away from. But there have been some advances in cutting-edge machine learning and AI and stats over the last 5 to 10 years that have been real breakthroughs. So for instance, like, you know, computers recognizing objects and images, trying to understand what is being said in large volumes of text, for example. Like, Frans did a demo earlier today where you could like run queries against a document in a way that couldn't be done with hard-coded rules. So, you know, like, if you were to build a machine translation system and you try to like write rules to translate from English to French, you'd have to like rewrite those rules if you wanted to translate it into Italian. Whereas with the amount of data that's available these days, as Jacques was saying, you know, you can have an algorithm learn how to map sentences in one language to sentences in another. So as far as like cutting edge breakthroughs, like, it's hard to keep up with what's going on. You know, so like you can take a photograph of an object or of anything, and an algorithm will produce a sentence description of what's in that image. Yeah, there are a bunch of really crazy examples. But maybe Frans has.
Yeah, sure. So by way of an introduction, so I'm managing director of DataProphet. We do a lot of machine learning work. Can everyone hear me?
I think it's just put it close because we need.
Okay, cool. So we do a lot of work on the algorithms themselves in terms of kind of whether it's AI or not, whether it's leading edge. The things that kind of I look for to see that is, say, let's look at the computer vision space. There, what you'll do is you're looking at a convolutional neural network. The base unit of a neural network is based off a biological neural network, right? Then you structure it much like the visual cortex of any mammal's brain, and you just feed it pixel values in a similar way that the cones in your retina would receive or light up, right? And in that algorithm, between the layers, you're going to begin to mimic behavior found in regular kind of brains. Right? There's some very interesting experiments done on cats with their optical cortex back in the kind of 60s, where things were a little bit flaky. But they were looking at kind of how the optical cortex works with electrodes upon it. You run a whole bunch of edges and you see how the neurons fire in the brain, and they're reacting in a similar manner to what you'll see in the lower levels of a convolutional neural network. Now that convolutional neural network was never said to find those edges, but it's beginning to mimic behavior that you're finding in regular brains. And that's a pretty cool indicator that we're headed in roughly the right direction if you're going to kind of narrowly define intelligence as to what you find in mammals' brains.
And on the other hand, sorry, you wanted to answer as well?
Hi everyone, I'm Antoine, co-founder and CEO of FinChatBot. I think the technology today is amazing in many different manners. You can really have amazing application, but I still want to think first about the customer, the client, that is key, because this is where you're going to get the money at the end. And is the technology ready to, let's say, be fully understandable by the customer? Can this application would be understood by the client, or I just want to raise an example. Like for example, the use of Siri. Siri is a chatbot, voice recognition chatbot. I still feel the limits of it, and still it's released to the customer, and the customer can use it, and still can feel a form of frustration because the machine doesn't understand well the customer request. So I think all those technology can be amazing if it's really well designed for the end user and not too complex in a sense.
And probably on one specific case as well, instead of trying to do everything.
Exactly. So doing something precise, very good, instead of offering a wide range of possibilities behind that.
Yes, I think the question is not in a way, how much is it currently in our lives. I think it's going to just be a fait accompli, that it's going to be an intricate part of our lives very shortly in every aspect. The pieces are coming together, and I think for all of us, it's really to think around. So with an artificial intelligence reality, a digital reality, how does that change our worlds? And what do we do about it? Because it is exponential. As the ability to connect data becomes real and the Internet of Things becomes real, it's just going to accelerate. And in fact, in the next 10 years, we won't have this conversation. It will be part of your world. So I think for all of us, the question is more around what do we do with that reality. To just give you a context of my world, I'm a founder and CEO of a company called Clevva. We are very interested in artificial intelligence that augments human beings. So that the interesting part is how do you help human beings become relevant and stay relevant, because artificial intelligence essentially is replicating human decision making. And we as human beings in our jobs, we make decisions that are simply replicating a formula. So most work as we know today will actually be gone. In my kids, I've got 2 daughters, they won't have a job as we know it. They won't simply go to a job and go and replicate some company's formula in a contact center, be an accountant, be a journalist. Those jobs won't exist because those are replicating formula jobs. So I think what's very pertinent is not that is this real, it is going to become an absolute reality. I think for all of us it's going to be interesting to say, so what do we do with that reality?
Cool, so can we dig a bit deeper in terms of business applications? On which industries do you think that AI can have the biggest impact to disrupt existing industries?
Okay, maybe I can give my experiences. So if you think of any job, any industry where there's a human being currently that is performing a replication job. In farming, the decisions are replication decisions. They're going to be in future drones that map farmlands, and they're going to be combine harvesters and picking machines that automate off those GPS locations. So you actually won't have a human being involved. If you think of in manufacturing, simply won't have human beings involved, replication. In distribution, in driving, you won't need drivers because it'll be far safer to have self-driving vehicles moving around. If you think of journalism, at the moment most journalism is done by people. Very shortly it won't be, it'll be done by automation because actually it does it quicker. And you'll get news feeds done automatically by robots. Opinion pieces will be left to human beings. The rest will be done through automation. If you think of sales, you won't need a salesperson to come tell you about the product. It'll have intelligent systems that will analyze your needs, it'll cross-sell. So if you think of any job, any industry where currently the focus of the industry is a replicating of a business formula and that's preventing scale, that simply will be done through automation. That's my view.
So I think AI is a bit of a nebulous term that's kind of loaded and hard to really understand. Like, I think if you rephrase that as machine learning, which broadly is taking examples and then trying to build a system that can take new situations and predict what the outcome should be. So examples here might be predicting fraud or credit scoring or churn prevention, or in the case of images, receive pixels and predict an output where you'll feed a convolutional neural network millions of images and it'll learn how to represent those pixels as higher order features to then assign a label. And so like in the case of self-driving cars, there are ethical implications that we'll probably get to, but like in the case of a human having a car accident, that human might die and the lesson from that car accident will be lost. Whereas if a self-driving car has an accident, that lesson is federated to all the other self-driving cars. In olden days, a bank may have had an experienced person who's been working there for 20 years, who will look at a transaction and be like, it looks a bit fishy, it's fraud. Whereas now you can take a database of hundreds of millions of transactions, feed that into a system, and the system will learn how to map the patterns in the data to an outcome, in that case being the label of fraud or not fraud. And so I think there's a certain set of problems that can be posed as taking an input and learning examples. And there are additions here like learning captions for images, but I think there are also parts of the story that I don't think computers are likely to be able to solve in the near future. I think there's a lot of hype. So, for example, in the image captioning case, algorithms perform better than humans. So if you get humans to label objects and images, the state-of-the-art algorithms now are more accurate than humans labeling images. But they get peculiar cases wrong. So for example, there's a great image of a bunch of dolphins jumping out of the ocean, taken from above. And the label that this algorithm generated was a flock of birds flying. And you could kind of see how it could think that these jumping dolphins look like a flock of birds, but like a 5-year-old kid is not going to get that wrong. Or an image of a kettle being seen as a cat, because it looks somewhat similar. People have a whole lifetime of experience, whereas these algorithms are receiving data and using that to make predictions. So I think there are certain kinds of things that people will still do, and I don't think we're all going to get completely automated away. But we'll see.
I mean, from our perspective, in the immediate future, I hate taking phone calls from my cell-phone company. I hate calling into contact centers, right? There's this huge channel within the text environment, within the bot environment, that is kind of coming down super fast right now. 68% of adults in South Africa use WhatsApp. We have the highest global penetration of WhatsApp users. And later this year, WhatsApp opens up its API to businesses. Right? Suddenly you get this kind of influx of conversations which are structured with this kind of asynchronous web or chat interface. And I can get very specific information, and I can talk to who I want to in terms of businesses when I want to. And I don't have to talk to someone on the phone because I don't want to talk to someone on the phone. 90% of people beneath the age of 36 would rather not talk to someone on the phone when it comes to business calls, right? That happens in 6 to 9 months, right? is there, you've got the data, you've got this kind of motivation behind the customers to not talk to people, but rather chat, and you've kind of got this capability within AI to have those conversations without the person typing them.
Why do you think it's not more widespread on Facebook Messenger, which is already only for bots?
That's good. I think so. That also kind of comes back to maybe bad AI, right? A lot of bots kind of aren't. They're novel right now. They're kind of very new in terms of features. They're very limited, and so people have that first interaction, like your first interaction with Siri, and you're like, okay, that was fun, but let's not do that again. And so, and that kind of was your reaction with Siri, right? But actually in the background, Siri's gotten really good. You don't know this, but like the last 3 or 4 years, speech to text is kind of ridiculously good. And if you go into the people building these systems, they're like, we spent the last 30 years, but in the last 3 years, we've moved the dial so much, it's just kind of getting out of hand now. Month to month, the benchmarks change completely. And that will likely happen within the chat environment as well. Your first interaction will be terrible. It'll be very limited. You'll say something and it will respond terribly. And you're like, oh, this is funny. And then 3 years down the line, that's how you interact with the business. And you haven't given it too much thought since that first interaction.
Just to end up, there's excellent examples. But if you think about it, just more higher level, you talk about business applications. What does it mean for business? So I've got actually a slide that talks about the value drivers of big data analytics. It's actually the value drivers of AI. What is it? And it's really around creating strategic value on a high level, and then also improving efficiencies. And you can break down strategic value. Can you look at generating it could be transformative in terms of the business, in terms of new opportunities based on what you're doing here with this. It could be faster, more proactive, better decisions that you want to support. So that would help a business to as well. And then on the improving efficiency side, if you think about any plant industry, it's improving throughput, quality, all of those business drivers, reducing risk. If you think about pieces of equipment, you want to do predictive maintenance, you use AI to do that. If you think about reducing your costs, reducing your risks, all of those type of things, those are the generic things. You can have a bunch of business applications, doesn't matter what industry, it's those kind of things. So it's creating strategic value, and that's what Google has done. There's a lot of innovation happening, new business models, new revenue streams being created via that value driver. But there's a bunch of stuff just in terms of improving efficiency, effectiveness, and so forth as well. Next question.
Yeah, we'll talk a bit more about the financial industry.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, to answer a bit more to your question, I think the next industry to be disrupted or enhanced by this technology, machine learning, AI, is the financial industry. As you were saying, the audience now is on messaging platform. We have more than 3 billion active users monthly on messaging platform. Businesses, financial industry, are still mostly using call centers to call their clients. I think the preferences are swifting to a usage of those platforms to contact businesses. Basically, the idea is to reduce the time spent by user drastically to have access to proper service. So, for example, you want to insure your car. In average, in South Africa, you need to spend more than 40 minutes on the phone with an amazing elevator music agent, call center, whatever. That won't probably understand you. That will probably call you back, send you an email, another call back, blah blah. With a chatbot on the financial industry, you can basically request and get access to your service in less than 5 minutes by asking a couple of questions, authentication, etc., and having access to this question in a very short amount of time. So I strongly believe the next big thing on AI is on the
How
financial
soon is it
industry.
happening? How soon is it happening?
Oh, you should check FinChatBot website.
Cool, that sounds great. I just want to say from that question in terms of industries, quite interesting. Financial services clearly being disrupted. The banks know it. They just want to talk about two things, since AI and also blockchain. Blockchain is incredible disruptive, and it was quite interesting. I had several sessions with, maybe I should have named banks, but one of the leading banks, talking with the executive team, and those are the two things. So, and they want to, and they realize they're going to be disrupted. So that insurance industry is ripe for disruption on all levels. So definitely to that point. But I think there's other industries as well. Healthcare will be disrupted. If you think about what even Google with DeepMind, their first business application areas in healthcare. So working with the National Health Services in the UK, and there's a bunch of stuff that they're doing there. And very exciting stuff on that front. IBM Watson, there's so many examples. Education, watch that space, will be heavily disrupted as well. And then industrial manufacturing industries are being disrupted. So I sold my previous company to General Electric and worked in the industrial space, and it's just amazing to see what's happening there. And Jeff Immelt, their CEO, was saying, yesterday we were a hardware company, because they've got all these pieces of equipment like turbines, or they've got power generators, or they've got MRI scanners or locomotives and stuff like that. But now they're saying, that was yesterday, today we're a software analytics company. It's amazing that they say that, because they realize everything is becoming software defined. It's almost like AI, intelligent software defined. So very, very, very interesting times. Okay.
Can I add? Yeah, I think what's also interesting for me is the when you look at many of the roles, just again on the unemployment problem we're going to hit, many of the jobs. Let's just take, for example, if you go and order now on Amazon, essentially no human being is going to be engaged, because they will have complete robotics. So it will be all automated. Robots will actually go and pick your piece off the shelf, pack it, send it. So in fact, there will be no human engagement at all. So those, practical menial jobs, you kind of say, okay, well, those are going. But what's interesting for the knowledge worker reality is that actually any time, we used to use knowledge as a barrier to entry. So if I was a doctor, my 18 years or 12 years of study was my barrier to entry, and that's why you could charge premium. Was a lawyer or as an accountant. But the reality is that artificial intelligence has now been able to replicate their diagnostic logic, because it's diagnostics. They essentially, when you're talking about banking, I'm diagnosing your needs, to understand your financial reality, to then sell your product across them. That's a replication. In a doctor, they're diagnosing the root cause of a symptom that's completely replicable, and I can actually use sensors to work that out, and in fact I can get the right outcome. So soon, doctors, the actual diagnostic skill of a doctor is going to be replicated, and because AI can leverage learnings globally, instantly, it can very quickly learn and be way ahead of an individual who's doing it in isolation and having to go to conferences to upgrade their brain. Accountants are very soon not going to be somebody that has a job, because actually the auditing will be done, there'll be automated auditing. Legal, it's a replication of a formula. There's a legal framework, and I apply rules to get an outcome. So what's interesting is that in so many areas where we thought we may be safe, actually very shortly those professions are going to be in danger. And I think that's something for all of us to really think through, is what, as a result of that, are human beings' role going to be? That's the question.
So can I ask about where the place for predictive analytics companies? Middle-sized predictive analytics company, which work with customized solutions with big companies like Thunderbank, NetBank, where they place going to be? Because so many new applications every day for each solution, churn, risk segmentation. So where the actual companies for predictive analytics going to
So I think that's relevant to us because that's what we do, right? so we do kind of machine learning serving to these large institutions within this space. We've done e-discovery, that's classifying legal documents, churn mitigation, which is can you predict the leading indicator for churn before that becomes kind of a concrete idea. In terms of interacting with these businesses, it's quite interesting. So We do work both here and overseas in the US, right? Very different engagements, kind of locally. Obviously, there's not a great deal of talent in terms of serving, and I'm going to talk more about machine learning and kind of more about traditional predictive analytics. But you'll find, we'll be in the room alongside someone like Microsoft who has kind of off-the-shelf solutions, right? Our kind of value proposition, or terminology I want to use, is the notion that because it's moving around so quickly, you actually want a kind of more customizable solution than something off the shelf, right? So in terms of interacting with those let's take the big banks for example. What we've seen in the last 12 months is that they've produced a series of new positions, typically within the banks. Call it digital fast lane, or call it chief data science officer, right? Each of these banks have kind of these new positions. Depending on their structure, they're typically quite senior. They're charged with building a team internally, but they know that they can't do that very quickly. So they bring in smaller players, such as ourselves, to say, okay, we'll get the solution in working, we'll train your people to get to kind of this level of capability, but it is going to take 6 years for education to catch up to the point where where they can kind of take over. So short term, it's great right now, this whole machine learning for people such as ourselves. Longer term, these large institutions should likely build this internally because of the amount of the effect that this team can have. By way of an example, I know of a team that worked within Old Mutual, right? Brought in new tech, and a team of 20 kind of had a massive effect on the profitability, larger than their entire kind of sales side, which is a team of now 15,000, right? And that's reasonable. So, if you're a business looking at that kind of measure of effect upon your own business, you should definitely build that internally. It's going to take you a bit of time. Small businesses have time now to serve that, and maybe become kind of a trusted partner, depending on that big business's strategy in the long term.
So I kind of skipped my introduction, but we're also in a similar space doing data science consulting and machine learning. And I'd say two things. So first of all, there are a lot of off-the-shelf solutions to problems. So for instance, there's this famous problem in computer science called the traveling salesman problem, which asks, how do I visit these X number of locations in the shortest distance? So let's say I want to travel and I want to go to Sydney, and I want to go to New York and LA, and I want to go to Brazil. If I go from here to New York to Sydney to LA to Brazil, that's a longer journey than some other way of taking that journey. And there are off-the-shelf algorithms that will solve those problems. And so it's easier for companies internally to solve these problems because a person doesn't even need to be a trained data scientist. They just need to know what to Google and how to run a Python script. But real-world business problems aren't typically the kind of things that you can plug into black boxes. Some of them are, and I think that's part of what's driving such hype. Is there are easy wins and low-hanging fruit in the space. But let's say, for instance, in the case of the traveling salesman problem, that's analogous to DHL trying to route their drivers every day to deliver packages. And there again, there's an off-the-shelf solution. But if you overlay specific constraints, like let's say one of those deliveries can only be made between these hours of the day, or you're trying to overlay traffic, which changes temporarily through the day. That causes those problems to no longer be off the shelf, and there are domain-specific challenges. Or one thing we see quite a lot is idiosyncratic data to the company. And so what's interesting there is the same algorithm that you'll use to solve the traveling salesman problem, or at least one approach. There are a lot of approaches, but say for example you use like a genetic algorithms approach to solving this routing problem of which order should you visit these destinations. You can use the exact same algorithm to optimize the way that you lay out pieces of wood to cut out as a carpenter, for instance. So there's this thing called the strip packing problem. You can use the exact same algorithm that you use to solve this traveling salesman problem to decide like how to place rectangles in a big piece of wood to minimize the total distance of wood, or how to place objects into a shipping container such that you minimize the amount of space that's not being taken up by objects. Now, you need to kind of see a number of different problems in different verticals and different domains to know that you can apply that algorithm to this other use case. So I think that there will always be value in companies that are solving problems across a variety of domains because they can bring expertise from one domain to another. So yeah, those are some 2 cents.
Thanks, Alex. I want to add to both you and Frans there. I think there's plenty of opportunity for the way I'm looking at it, it's not just predictive analytics companies. What we're doing in Cortex Logic, one of my companies, is to look at end-to-end solutions where you operationalize data science to solve a business problem. And it's not just the AI part. You need to have a data lake, a data warehouse. You want to automate the predictive analytics around the whole thing. And how do you integrate it and make it actually operational? Now, I've talked to pretty much all the corporates, and there's a lot of instances where they haven't done that. Plenty of opportunity to automate that whole thing around churn prediction, around all the use cases that we've talked about. But that's one dimension. There's another dimension here. AI is evolving at an incredible rate. And what's happening, the major tech players are open sourcing their software. So it provides opportunity for the ecosystem to help improve the technology. So that's why you see quite a bit of improvement. So if you are diligent and you're actually following what's happening and you've got teams that's active in that space, you can come up with a very innovative solution very quickly. And because you've got access, they build their commercial solutions on top of this. The one big advantage that those major tech players, some of them have, like Amazon and so forth, that there's plenty of data available and stuff. So it's very difficult to compete on that level. But I think there's opportunity to create niche kind of solutions for specific companies with their data using state-of-the-art AI. This is another thing. That whole toolbox has tremendously been strengthened over the last few years. So you get all sorts of derivatives around deep learning and stuff like that, but it's available. And it's not just now your support vector machines and your random forests and stuff. Suddenly you do have deep learning and all sorts of varieties that you can actually apply in an elastic cloud. You've got computing, you've got GPUs. Suddenly you can actually implement solutions. You can even implement solutions on devices. You can put your TensorFlow is made available on devices as well. So you've got a trained model, deploy it. And with IoT and the generation of data, there's so many opportunities. I think we're going to see more companies and more opportunities. So I'm not even concerned, I'm not at all concerned. Okay.
Do you think the disruption is going to come more from startups or from tech giants? And do you think that big corporations are able to adapt to artificial intelligence?
That's an excellent question. I think we're going to see, it's almost like burning the candle from both sides. A company like Google, it's not that old. It's actually, Google started when I started my first company, Season Systems, and I sold that to GE, but they're still going. They're billions, they're very strong. But they are innovating all the time. So Facebook, the type of people there, so you will clearly see innovation. Apple sits on a bunch of cash. They need to make very good strategic decisions to innovate. So the moves that they make now will determine their future as well. So I think you will see innovation from them for sure. They're not going to go away. They've learned the lessons around the Kodaks, the Nokias, and stuff like that. So everybody's aware of that. Nobody can rest on their laurels. But you will see a lot of innovations and potentially new companies that you haven't heard of that could be the trillion-dollar companies as well. So it's very exciting times. Yeah.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Who are the leaders in this area now? So will it be
and
like
AI.
Yeah, exactly. So will it be still the same like Microsoft, Amazon, Google, IBM, the big players from the Silicon Valley, or can they be the next player from Israel, South Africa, Asia, Europe? What's your opinion? And the second question is like, you're running AI,
Yeah.
which technology you're using? You're using from them or not?
Okay, great question. I think there could be innovation from it. Listen, if you think about AI right now, we are scratching the surface. They talk about the third AI wave, where we need to get more contextually aware. Our deep learning systems is not clever enough to provide explanations of what they're doing. So you'll see combinations of stuff. So plenty of opportunity for innovation. That being said, those companies, the big companies, realize that, remember, they're vying for the AI throne. It's going to be very difficult to beat DeepMind with 200 data science attracting still top people. They're not going to get away. So it's going to be, I think there's still opportunities, but it's going to be very difficult to compete as well. But there's still plenty of opportunities to innovate. With the Machine Intelligence Institute of Africa, we've got also a vision like DeepMind, solving intelligence. Okay, we still need all the people, talent, to help solve intelligence, but that's what we're trying to create. But why do you want to do it? To solve problems, to create a better world, to help transform Africa. Well, that's anyway what we try to do with MIA. So your second question was around what kind of technologies. Quite interesting. I've got one slide that shows it's completely different. But my first business, we wrote everything from scratch, C++. I was at the Department of Computer Science. I did my PhD in recurrent neural networks, AI. So this is my career is in this area. And I pointed some of my students my first company, and we wrote everything from scratch. We know all the different techniques, support recognition, random forest, we've written neural nets, all the different type of things. But I think since 2005, there's some new, and obviously with cloud computing and with some innovations, things have improved quite a bit. So you do have a richer toolbox. So basically what I want to say here, the way I'm looking at it now, I've got new startups, like Cortex Logic. There's Benedict AI, maybe we're just talking about virtual assistants and practical applications there, but to answer your question, so I think there will be proprietary stuff, but the innovation is so quick, you've got to be super aware of what's happening in open source. That's exactly what the tech players are doing. They are open, they want to, TensorFlow are trying to make sure that more people get on there. Facebook is with Cafe or Torch, PyTorch and so forth, so you see that happening. So you've got to use that, that could be part of the thing. Then I think there is commercial offerings of the top players, like IBM Watson. So I'm for instance, for Benedict AI, we created the first minimum viable product using IBM Watson. Because when I've looked at everything that was available, and it was for the conversational workspace was the best out there at this particular point in time. But that's changing. I've looked at Amazon as well, I looked at Microsoft, seen there's some great stuff there, but just there's little pieces that makes it easier to actually customize solutions. But we can plug and play. We can replace that quickly with the open source thing, because we don't want to be dependent on, they are just using open source as well, and they've just wrap it up. And there's plenty of startups creating APIs now as well. So you see, so I'm keeping it completely open. We're writing proprietary stuff, but maybe it's more on to solve a business problem and utilizing APIs. We're living in the API economy. So you can provide APIs. If that was not good enough, you replace it. You've got a better one. You use that one. But you need to be ready to plug and play. This is the 21st century. You've got to be agile. So I think it's a great question, but plenty of opportunity. Yeah. Sorry. Who's next?
I would just say, so DeepMind got acquired for, I think around $400 billion.
Yeah, 400 million pounds.
Billion pounds. That's a billion. Oh, sorry. Definitely not billion. That would be crazy. Yeah, 400 million pounds or dollars. On the order of hundreds of millions in real currencies. Well, the point I'm making though is that they had 12 PhDs, so they weren't this like big tech giant. Like they're now being absorbed into a big tech giant. But they made some real breakthroughs. So I mean, they had a system that could learn to play old school Atari games like Breakout or Pong, just by looking at the pixels of the game, and by playing the game repeatedly. A similar approach to how they built AlphaGo, this like Go AI. But they were a relatively small company. Now they're in Google and they're a big company. But if you look at the state of the art across computer vision and natural language processing, for instance, like there's this class of neural network approaches called like general adversarial networks, and there was a paper like 3 or 4 months ago that has finally put forward an approach that can actually train these models. And if you look at the literature, like breakthroughs are being made constantly, and I don't think there's a reason why those have to come out of the big tech companies. As Jacques was saying, access to APIs and so on. I mean, I'm skeptical if you even need the kind of computing power that they have a monopoly over. Like, you could buy a bunch of GPUs for not too much cash, or use cloud computing instances fairly easily to process very large volumes of data. I mean, like the whole of Wikipedia is on the order of 100 gigabytes uncompressed, just the text portion. But I mean, you could process that at home. Like, I don't think you need to have Facebook level hardware or Google level hardware.
But you still need the workforce to build this machine learning.
I'm skeptical. Like, one person can go a long way. Like, you can build that image capturing system. One smart person working hard, drinking a lot of coffee can. Yeah. Well, also like leveraging open source and standing on the shoulders of giants. I think the other thing that is somewhat relevant is a lot of the researchers who are making these like breakthroughs towards general artificial intelligence, they've already made absurd amounts of money. I think like there's a real love of just like developing the state of the art and doing research, and so I think they'll continue to want to publish their findings. I don't think that's going to live in a walled garden. So you can read a paper and try out some new neural network architecture and make a breakthrough that no one's ever made before. I don't think that's necessarily limited to the big AI companies. The other thing I say is just, I mean, like people don't the brain is this immense computing power, and we don't really understand exactly how it works. But people aren't reading the whole of Wikipedia. They're going out in the world and having experiences. But I'm skeptical that you need like this massive computing power or these massive data sets. I think that's largely due to algorithms still being quite primitive. I think that there is some algorithm out there, and no one's really figured it out yet. But I don't think that that's limited to these big AI, these big tech players.
I mean, so kind of from my perspective, watching this field, like the DeepMind team, forget their names, but Okay. But I mean, like all of this recent hype and all of these recent things have come out of academic labs that have subsequently moved into things, and those academic labs are 3 people, and they've made these breakthroughs, and these breakthroughs are great, and it's AI, etc. But it's the big problem, or the thing that gets this to working, is actually making this practical. Like, take speech to text, right? What you don't know is, like, Microsoft is phenomenally good at it, and they've been phenomenally good at it for a long time. It's just been shipping with Microsoft Windows, right? But they're better than your Dragon Speech and this, that, and next thing. And Dragon Speech will ask you to pay for it. But there's this little engineering team that is just really good. But they forgot to make this marketing. Yeah, they forgot to market it. They forgot to tell anyone. Also, they're a bunch of engineers, so they forgot to make it greet someone, right? So they forgot to make it human. So it's really good, right? If you benchmark it, but it doesn't matter. And like Google tries to do all of these things all of the time, and then 6 months or 12 months down the line they kill you. Like Google Wave, that was cool, but we don't use Google Wave. Everyone uses Slack these days, right? But they tried. But Slack got it right, even though they weren't trying, because they were trying to make games, and then they made this internal messaging system. Turns out that's pretty cool. So that happens like all the time. And it's as much as these big tech giants should be doing it, and they are doing it with benchmarks, they don't do it as frequently. Like VR came out of a garage, right? You would have thought a big tech company would get there first, but no. It's that kind of little bit. No one really wants Google Glass, turns out. Cost them a bit. And it will be someone else who works out, actually, this is how you make that interface work with humans. Right? And I think that allows small numbers of people right, to compete with large numbers of people and more money.
I'd like to wrap up with the last part. Sorry, Jacques. I know you have a lot to say. On the ethical matters related to AI, can one of you guys give us some examples of limitations of AI when it comes to ethics?
I think at the botcon a good example was used, but you can imagine with smart cars, if you just self-driving and you've got two cars that collide, or are about to collide, you've got an 85-year-old man, very, very wealthy, who's paying huge amounts of tax in the one car, and you've got an unemployed mother with a child in the other car, and the AI needs to make a decision about who takes the impact and who is saved. There becomes some very interesting decisions, because the rational logic might work on the government's favor, who are maybe sponsoring a lot of that logic, to say, save that 80-year-old because we're earning a lot of money out of them. And then the emotional, social view would say that person's near the end of their life, and actually it should be the mother and child. So I think what's interesting is that you then start asking questions around what is ethics, what are ethics, and what are morals, and it always depends on whose perspective you're seeing it from. And I think the interesting part about decision making that is automated is that you may find those decisions embedded into the learning that start reinforcing certain outcomes that you're unaware of. So I may find that actually I keep asking the bot for some credits because I desperately need it, but there is an algorithm that's picking up some that's just saying no, and I never understand why I don't get it. And so you can reinforce in many, many ways certain decisions on scale. Whereas historically we had to rewire human beings. Each person had to go through a schooling system to brainwash them to see the world in a certain way, to get conformity in decision making. Now we can get, with one algorithm change, 1 billion people affected instantly through some form of decision making that influences their life. So I think what's going to be very interesting and challenging is that how do we manage the impact of decisioning that affects all of us, when in many ways sometimes those decision architectures are not in line to our decision making ethics, and we start becoming a victim of somebody else's algorithm. So I believe there's going to be a very important conversation that's going to be had as the scale of this starts affecting all of our lives, and that we actually start being influenced. It's easy when you're not influenced negatively. It becomes very problematic when you become influenced negatively, and you have very little way of changing that because you're a very small factor in a very large algorithm.
I just want to add to that. I absolutely agree. I think we need a lot of wisdom, and I think we need to shape this technology to our advantage. So we need really leadership with really wisdom, and then we can do something about it. So I think I'm all positive about it. But that needs to happen. If that doesn't happen, you've got dictators, it could be a mess. So I think Stephen Hawking said the same. It could be the best thing that could happen to human beings, or it could be the worst thing. So it's up to us, and I think we can shape it. Governments as well, with regulation, and they need to move very quickly. So they need to adapt this kind of technology very quickly. And regulation is going to be super, super important as well. So, and again, wisdom is going to be needed. That's what we need.
Yeah.
We need those leaders to stand up.
As you said, there are prominent thought leaders like Elon Musk that are skeptical or maybe pessimistic about the future of AI. So we understood that you stand on the optimistic side.